Buddy, we have a jam-packed 60 to 75 minutes ahead of us. My name is Carmen. I'm the superintendent. We'll do some introductions in a few seconds here of the experts that are on this call, that are on this meeting. But first of all, I just want to thank you for taking an hour out of a Tuesday morning. For many of you, it might be a summer vacation. For some of you, you're zooming in from work. But we really do appreciate your willingness to participate and to either ask questions in the written form and just to be here to advocate for our district and for your children. It really does mean a lot to us. So without further ado, we are going to, we're going to start with the first slide, and I'm going to tell you how the next 60 to 75 minutes are going to go. So thanks, Aaron. So over the last 3 days, we have had over 2,500 questions submitted. This is meeting number 5 with parents, right? Yes, this is meeting number 5. And we have our last one tonight. And basically what we did is we took your 2,500 questions and we coded them into 3 different themes. And the 3 themes are testing and tracing, cleaning, masking and distancing, and then also instructional models, the hybrid and remote. And we, there's no way we can get through 2,500 questions. But what we attempted to do was design a slideshow that has a whole bunch of those answers to those themes within the slides. So we will take approximately 20 minutes per theme, and we'll go through a few slides for the first theme, and then we'll take a break and we'll ask you to use your raise your hand feature in Zoom. And so you'll be able to raise your hand. I think it's a little blue hand that comes up on your picture. And then we'll be able to get some questions from the audience. And we'll go through some of your questions. Again, we probably won't be able to get through all of them, but don't worry. If you don't get your questions answered today, like your live questions, we're gonna send you a feedback form minutes after this ends, and you'll be able to send your questions in that way. And we can answer them by FAQ, or by reaching out to you via email, or you can email me personally, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. So those are our 3 themes. Now, our emergency response team, why are these questions really important? It's because our emergency response team, which has been meeting since the pandemic began in early March, your questions are really the fuel for our agendas. And they really do sort of shape our work for the district. So, and we meet on a weekly basis. And actually we have another meeting today at noon. Now, one caveat, I'm gonna give you as many answers as I can today, but just realize that sometimes my answers may change from today to tomorrow or till next week. And it's because we receive guidance on a daily basis, updated guidance from Dr. Mendoza and the Monroe County Department of Health, and also the New York State Department of Health. And of course, our governor also likes to chime in when at least on a weekly basis. So we need to be able to respond to all of those changes. So sometimes my answers may change as well. And sometimes I don't have the answer, and I'll tell you that as well. So what are the guidelines for today's meeting? Well, we have 5, okay? So first, we're recording the meeting, and as soon as we're done, usually within about 6 hours, we'll post this recording to our website. So our first 4 sessions are already up on our website, on our COVID page. And as I mentioned before, we are gonna get through as many of the questions that you all submitted as best we can over the next 60, 75 minutes. Raise the hand feature. So you don't actually have to raise your hand like this. There actually is a little button that you push for Zoom. And I know I may be insulting your intelligence, but sometimes people may not be really versed with Zoom, and they may not realize that raise the hand is actually a button that they push. Please stay on mute because the background noise sort of interferes as we're talking. And then the last one is probably the most important one. We are all sharing together this emotional roller coaster of stress, fatigue, anxiety, frustration, you name it. I'm sure we've all gone through it, and we're sort of doing it together. But we also all know that we're all trying our best. So either you're trying your best as a parent, as a teacher, as an employee, as a superintendent, we're all trying our best. Now, with that said, I also know that some of my answers you may not like, and sometimes when people ask a question or some of their opinions, you may not agree with either. However, we are all sort of in this together. We are definitely trying our best, and remember that kindness goes a long, long way. So, with that said, let's start with our with introductions. I'm Carmen. Brian Neenan is our deputy superintendent. Brian's on this meeting. For operations, we have two people. Brian Freeman is our chief financial officer, and Blaine Cunningham is our director of buildings and grounds. And you'll be hearing from them when we get into cleaning, safety, for cleaning and disinfection and ventilation. And from instruction, we have Colleen Armstrong. She is our student service guru, special ed expert. Erin Land is our director of elementary ed. She's running this meeting. She's moderating it. Human resources, Dave Swinson is on the call. In case any of you get inspired to want to work for the district, he is the person that you can reach out to. Building administration, we have two elementary principals. Laura Ballou from Clem North, Craig Bodensteiner from Plank North. Brian Powers is on this meeting from Willink Middle School, and Glenn Wiedor is from Thomas High School. And then lastly, our technology gurus, Brian Zimmer and Joe Montemero, are also participating in this meeting. The three themes, we're going to start off with the last theme that you see, which is instructional models. So there are about 4 slides here, 4 or 5 slides. We're going to talk a little bit about remote learning first. Okay, we're going to focus on remote learning in general, then focus on elementary remote and secondary remote. So remote in general, students will definitely have their devices from school, and we're also going to provide every family with an extra charging cord as well. Daily attendance, if your child's in 100% remote, just think of it as they're attending a remote school, and their attendance is definitely required. This is very different than in the spring when we had emergency learning. So their attendance is required. There's going to be assignments that are required. There will be grading. There will be report cards. They are in school. IEP programs and services definitely are offered.
Start reading it because I don't know what I should not have pushed yes. I should have pushed no, and I knew it too.
Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, got them. But IEP programs and services will be provided. IEPs are a legal document, and we are bound by all those services. And Ms. Armstrong will be talking about that in a few seconds. Students are going to opt in to this remote model for 1 semester at a time. So this goes from now through the end of January. And why do we do that? And it's because we are going to staff our remote team as well as our in-person team based on the numbers that we have of the families that are opting for the remote model. If all of a sudden remote students are coming back into the classroom, that could actually affect our 6-foot distancing rules, because if all of a sudden kids are coming back into the class and we haven't staffed for that, for the extra bodies, then we wouldn't be able to keep the 6 foot in place. And that is key for us. It is easier to go from hybrid to remote, right? And it's because remote learning doesn't have a 6-foot requirement, right? So it is easier to go from in-person to remote. That change can happen a little bit quicker. Although if your child has special services or any kind of services, sometimes it might be a little bit trickier for us to make that happen instantaneously. But again, it can happen a little bit more easily than from remote to in-person. So remote, you're opting in for 1 semester at a time. Ms. Armstrong, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about the IEP programs and services.
Thanks, Carm. We did get a lot of questions about, what will 100% remote look like if my student has an IEP and needs services? And it will look a little different than it did when we had our emergency learning in the spring. You're going to have a schedule, you'll have assigned teachers, and we will follow the IEP and provide those services. The other question that we get a lot of is, what about evaluations? In the spring, we were not able to hold those in person. We are able to do that now. So we will have your building team work with you to make sure that those get done in a timely manner. And then, each student's plan is going to look very different because they're individual education programs. So please reach out to your building teams if you have questions, or if not, you can always contact us up at Student Services and we'll help you and talk through what your child's plan might look like.
Thanks, Colleen. So let's dive in a little bit and get into the weeds a bit with the elementary remote model. So at the elementary level, there will be your child, if they go remote, it's actually the same thing if they go hybrid. They will either be assigned an AM slot or a PM slot. And during these slots, they will have live time with a real teacher. That teacher will be from Webster. And they'll be with that teacher for basically a 2-hour block, right? Every day. So every day there will be a 2-hour remote block with their teacher. And there will be 3 parts to those 2 hours. There will be an ELA portion, a math portion, and a social emotional learning portion called SEL. That's sort of like the morning meeting. And again, that's where they're really going to begin to build those relationships and build those connections. The opposite half of their day is, for the most part, it's asynchronous. It's sort of like on demand. And they could be working on assignments from the teacher. They could be working on a reading assignment, typing. We're going to have typing available. Raz Kids, Mystery Science. There will also be art and music available. Now, sometimes those may be live, but most of the time it will be an on-demand lesson that the art and music teachers from Webster have recorded and put up in the cloud that you'll be able to access. So we attempted to have this option very similar to a hybrid option, that it's going to be a blend of live classes with a teacher, independent work time, and then obviously there's some lunch and breaks. And again, we're trying to be cognizant of just how much stamina a student could have, especially if they're 5, 6, 7 years old, being in front of a screen in front of a teacher for the day. Thank you. So that's elementary. Now, what does a secondary remote option look like? Now, this is a wee bit different here. And so every 6th through 12th grader in Webster is going to receive a schedule. It's an 8-period traditional schedule. It's very similar to the 8-period schedules that most of us went to high school with, right? So every student, grades 6 through 12, gets an 8-period schedule. Now, if you're remote, you will basically meet depending on the calendar day. So if the calendar day is an odd day, like September 13th, September 15th, September 21st, whatever. If it's an odd calendar day, you are going to Zoom in, or actually Google Meet in, live with your odd period teachers. 1, 3, 5, 7 on the odd days, 2, 4, 6, 8 on the even calendar days. Now, on the opposite periods, so on the odd days, 1, 3, 5, 7 are going to be mandatory. You have to make those periods. On the even days, 2, 4, 6, 8, mandatory. You have to make those periods. The off periods, you can still chime in. You can still Google Meet in with your teacher if you have some questions about your homework, about the lab, about a question on the, there's a piece on the assignment or a writing piece that you need some extra help with. Those may not be mandatory. Now, that being said, I'm a former biology teacher at the high school. I may very well say to my students, you know what, I know this is an off day for you, but I need you to come in and see me because we got to finish this lab. So I'm going to make this particular period, I'm going to make it mandatory. But for the most part, even days, 2, 4, 6, 8, got to see those periods and those teachers odd days 1, 3, 5, 7. Now, so every day a student is going to be live streaming, right? Whatever, with 4 of their teachers, and then the other periods they can get some extra help. And remember that there's also a lunch break built in, because most of our students have lunch that's part of their 8-period day, and most kids have a study hall. So we wanted to make sure we designed something that didn't have our students Zooming for 6.5 hours straight, and we wanted to build in those breaks. So this, we think, we're able to prevent screen fatigue. So that's a secondary. That's the general overview of a secondary. Now for remote. Now let's go to in-person. So the in-person model for elementary, it's going to look similar. The actual model looks a little bit similar to the remote model. So your children are assigned either an AM block or a PM block, right? And the block itself is 2 hours. And again, 3 periods to those 2 hours: ELA, math, and social emotional learning, or a morning meeting. So first of all, I know one of the biggest questions we got was when this first came out was, why is it only 2 hours long? That's not a half a day. And you're right, it's not a half a day. Our half days are typically 2.5 hours. That's the way it's always been, 2.5 hours. And, but we know at the very beginning of the school year, according to the survey that many of you filled out, actually almost 6,000 of you filled out, 44% of our families are providing transportation themselves for their children. So we know at the elementary level, we're going to have to extend, and probably at the secondary level too, but we're going to have to especially extend the arrival and dismissal times for the elementary. So that's why it's not 2.5 hours, but we do think that we have this really cool app that we're going to be using, that we do think that after the first few weeks, we'll be able to get closer and closer to like 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours and 15, 2 hours and 20. I'm not sure if we'll get to 2:30, but after a few weeks, that 2 hours will hopefully be extended. So now what do the kids do during the opposite halves of their day? Again, similar to the remote model, they'll have some on-demand things that they can pull down from the cloud: typing, reading, assignments from the teacher, Raz Kids for reading, mystery science. We do expect our art and music specials to be virtual this year for our in-person learning model. So there will be synchronous live art and music lessons during the opposite blocks for your children. And don't worry if they can't make that live session, because it'll be recorded and you'll be able to pull it down from the cloud at a time that's convenient for you. PE will be offered live. It will be in person, probably 1 day a week, probably for about 20, 25 minutes. Okay? Again, we're looking for a blend of in-person live time and the independent work time as well. Now, why did we go with every day for a half day? The number one piece that we heard from teachers was that, and from many parents, was that they really wanted to make sure that their children or that their students began to get into a routine and a schedule and began to have daily contact with their teacher in order to build those relationships. So that's why we went to Monday through Friday. Secondary level. So as you know, many of you have secondary students. Last week you found out your cohorts. So our students will be in person all day long, 2 days a week, either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And then Wednesdays will be remote. So they're going to have all 8 of their classes on Wednesdays. There'll be mini classes of 25 minutes. So they'll be in person for all 8 periods on Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And then on Wednesdays, they will chime in with their teacher, and it'll be mandatory, and they'll have a mini class for approximately 25 minutes. why did we choose Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday? Our goal was to not have more than really 48 to 72 hours in between a time that a student sees their teacher. So this Monday, Thursday with a Wednesday remote, or Tuesday, Friday with a Wednesday remote, the students are basically, I mean, they're not going more than really 48 hours without seeing the eyes of their teachers. So that's why we chose that. So the 2 days that the students are totally remote and totally independent, they're still learning things. They're still, I mean, they're doing independent work. They're working on assignments. They're pulling down videos. They're pulling down on-demand modules that the teachers are designing. So there is still learning going on. I know it's not in person. I know it's not, like remote and zooming in, but they're still able to still work on assignments at that time. So that's the secondary piece. I wanted to show you the secondary calendar, or the secondary schedule. On the left-hand side, that's the high school schedule, and the middle school schedule is next to it. So you can see that they both start at 8:45. They end at 3:15. The periods are between 40 and 44 minutes long. Remember, kids are going to get lunch in there. They're going to have their study hall as well. And on their 2 days that they're in person, they're just following that schedule, that traditional 8-period schedule. On the right-hand side is the Wednesday remote schedule, and you can see that they start zooming in at 11 o'clock, and they go until 2:55, and each class is 25 minutes long. So I'm going to end there. That's our first theme. That's the instructional model theme. So now we're going to take questions from you. So use the raise your hand feature and raise your hand, and we'll get through as many questions as we can. We'll probably take about 10 minutes.
The first question is from Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Hey guys, this is Phil Piepko. I got a question about middle schoolers who will be taking high school math or science. How is that supposed to work?
Are they taking high school math or science at the middle school, or are they taking high school math or science at the high school?
I was hoping you could answer that for me.
Okay. The only reason I'm asking that is because sometimes it can be held both ways. But Mr. Powers, as I think is on the line, or I think is in this meeting. Powers, can you help us with that one? Or Mr. Weedle,
Yeah.
the answer to this is due. Go ahead, Mr. Powers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carmen. And it's a great question. We have our 8th graders who are in accelerated math and science do take those Regents courses, and they will take them in the building. And we've built in the same extended time. So we actually offer a little additional time in our traditional schedule, and we have incorporated that into our new schedule as well, so that they'll be getting the same amount of seat time as their high school peers. If your question is to the very small number of students who are what we might call double accelerated, so an 8th grader who's taking, we do have a handful of 8th graders who are taking geometry, and that is still scheduled to take place first period at Thomas High School. I believe Spry and Schrader the same way, and those students will then be bused, it'll be shuttled from the high school to Willink, or from Schrader to Spry following first period. So I'm not sure if that's a very small group of students, but in either case, we have that accommodated, if that answers the question.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Powers. Thank you, Phil, for that question. That's a good question.
Thanks.
Next question is from Michael Bell.
Hi, Mike. Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I was just all consist of.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, you said they were going to be taking classes in elementary on social and emotional learning.
Yes. Yep. So Mrs. Land, go ahead and answer that one because she's the elementary expert. Mrs. Armstrong can answer that too, but go ahead, Miss Land.
Yep, either one of us. So we incorporate things like morning meeting into our instruction at elementary, and that's where kids start to build relationships with each other and with the teacher. And that's where we teach kids how to work well in a group, We talk about our essential skills. So it's all about being able to work in a community together. And we know that having kids being not together in the spring, that it's super important for us to focus on that this fall. So that will be part of our elementary program when they're in school.
Great question, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bethany Maston is the next question.
Hi, Bethany.
Hi, I'm just curious for students who are attending school. I have secondary school students. If they're sick or something on a day when they're supposed to attend, can they just be virtual on those days? And how does
Great.
attendance count for, like, I guess attendance is going to be a little bit different this year.
Yeah, so great question. So their absence will be like a typical absence for a typical school. So they don't go to the remote class. So think about the 100% remote students as in a totally different school, right? And so they're attending their own school with their own teachers. So if your son or daughter are sick, they would just do what they had normally done, which was, they're going to contact the teacher and they're going to be able to work with the teacher to make up whatever they missed. But they don't have to, so they don't go to the 100% remote class for that day or that week or however long they're out. And attendance will be, it really will be similar. I mean, the teacher will take attendance at the beginning of each in-person class and also on the Wednesday remote piece as well. So I know in terms of like the number of days that they'll be taking attendance, you're right. It's only three days out of the week instead of 5, but it's still going to be really, really important. Great question, though.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next question is from Kim Kozlowski.
Kim, I was waiting for your question.
Oh, it's an easy one, Carm. So I have a 4th grader and they haven't gotten any music selections yet. Is that coming?
Yes, it is. Don't know exactly when that will occur or how it will look, but we do expect to have music, no matter what option that you choose, remote or hybrid. We do expect music to be part of that. I wish I could have the details, but we're still working that out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. That was way too easy from you. Okay.
I know. I saved the hard ones for your email.
Okay.
Next question is from Kat Rupp.
Hi, Miss Rupp.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good.
Good. I actually am a teacher in Greece, and I have a kindergartner starting with you guys this fall.
Okay.
So for me, my elementary student is going to daycare during the day because I have to work, and therefore most likely will not be able to tune in during the live PM 2-hour session. He's 100% remote.
Okay.
So will that live session be accessible outside of the school day, and how is that going to affect attendance?
Wow, that's a great question.
Thank you. I come with a lot of them. I'm on both ends of this issue.
So, Kat, I don't have an answer for you just yet because,
and that's okay.
Yeah, the whole attendance piece is really interesting because basically what you're going to end up doing is you're in essence you're doing homeschooling.
Well, and I'm going to be honest right now. I don't actually know if I'm going to survive this experience or
Yeah, I hear you.
There is a strong possibility, and I was upfront with your registrar the other day that I am going to withdraw my child within the first month, and he's going to experience pre-K maybe again at his daycare via Doodlebugs. Yeah. But I have to start off with the assumption that he might be able to do some of this.
Sure. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Is saying that, you know what, Kat, if you email me, let me think about this a little bit more, and then I might actually just give you a call.
That's fantastic, and I appreciate you taking my question.
No problem.
Would assume though there's a lot of parents though that might be in this
scenario,
and so and that's no fault. You guys are working so hard to make it work. I can't imagine all the technology that's going into this, but this is my reality, and
Yes.
I can't imagine that I'm the
Yeah.
only person in this boat. So thank you. I will email you directly, and have a
Okay.
great day.
Thanks, Kat. Two more, Mrs. Land.
Sure. Next question is from Katie Sauer.
Hi, Katie.
I have a question. Hi. I have my son is going into UPK, and I just was unsure if we're not comfortable sending him, do we have the option of opting in January, or if we're not comfortable sending him, do we have to unenroll?
That's another great question. And I don't have the answer just yet. Sorry.
Understandable. I get it. There's a lot of questions.
But Katie, if you were to email Miss Balsamo, actually email me and I will forward your question to the expert and they'll be able to help you. Sorry,
Okay. Thank you.
the expert on UPK. Great question.
All right. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
One more. So hopefully I can answer this one.
Last question is from Keith Zenkel.
Mr. Zankel.
Hello there.
Hi.
Just a quick question regarding schedule changes. If
Yes.
we switch days from, was it Monday, Thursday
Yep.
to Monday, Thursday from Tuesday, Friday? Are those
Yep.
being reviewed, and what's the timeline for those?
Absolutely being reviewed. Mr. Weedor, Keith, is your child in middle school or high school?
High school.
Mr. Weedor, can you?
I did
'cause
submit the
I-
form. I did
Yeah,
submit
the-
the form, so just that was just
Okay,
wondering.
great. Yeah, Mr. Weedor can answer this one.
The deadline for all those requests is tomorrow afternoon. So I can tell you that we're already started reviewing all the requests that are coming in. And the 4 secondary principals are all committed to trying to be as accommodating as we can with all of the requests, because we know that every one of those requests is a family problem we're trying to solve. So we are doing our darndest to get every one of those requests met. Once we do that, once we do review all the requests, the backpack will be updated, I would guess, sometime next week. And then we're going to have to reshuffle schedules a little bit to balance things out a little bit, to keep those numbers down to where we have an average of 13 kids in a room at a time. So student schedules might not be ready until probably the week of the 24th. Okay?
Okay, thanks. But we will probably find out sometime in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send out, and I'm sure Mr. Benz and Mr. Powers and Mr. Bear will also send out just a note saying that the backpack has been updated with groupings. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Keith. All right, so we're going to end there with that theme. I know that there are still 12 of you with your hands up. Don't worry. We're going to send out that feedback form, and you'll be able to ask your questions there, and you can also email me directly. So the second theme is testing, screening, contact tracing, and this is where the number one question from parents came from. And the number one question is, what happens if there's a positive test? Now, there's a lot that goes into the answer to that, and there's a lot that leads up to it. So we're not going to get to that question until the second slide. But first, let's start with what happens as when a child wakes up in the morning, and then let's get them into school, and then we'll sort of talk about that positive test once they're in school. So every child and every employee will have to complete a health screen at home, including the temperature check, before coming to school. And we are going to give an app to everybody. Everyone's going to have an app, every parent, every family, and they're going to fill out the screen for each one of their children and then submit their screen. Now we'll know which students, because if you're like me, if I'm a horrible father and I always forget to do stuff for my daughters. But we'll know that at the school, they'll know which students didn't have the screening for that day, and we'll be able to scan their temperature. We just can't scan the temperature of all 8,400 of our kids every day. But we can certainly do spot checks for those that have forgotten. So the next big questions were, is testing mandatory, and will schools do any testing? Right now, testing is not mandatory. And it's because basically we don't have enough reagents we don't have enough stuff to test, all the parts. And, as a nation, as a region, as a state. So, and CDC and our departments of health all say the same thing. We don't want everyone to be tested because we don't have the materials. So we only want the people who we need to test, which are symptomatic people who have been exposed, who may not be symptomatic yet, and people who are about to undergo any kind of surgery or medical procedures. And also those within some pretty vulnerable populations like in nursing homes. Right now, testing is not mandatory. Could that change by September 10th? Yep, it might. I don't expect it to, but it could. Will schools do any testing? I don't ever see this. I don't ever see our schools being a place where the kids are going to get tested. It will most likely be an urgent care, pediatrician's office, or a testing site. It won't be within the nurse's office or anything like that. So what happens if a child falls ill? Okay, they're not feeling well, and they're starting to show some type of symptoms of medical distress. So it could be a cough, might be a fever, it could be a stomach ache, whatever it is. So the first thing that'll happen is the teacher would call down to the nurse. The nurse would really do a triage, and they would do that triage over the phone, and they would. And the nurse would then say, okay, you know what, send them down, send the child down. The child really goes into an isolation area, a supervised illness room, and they're examined. And depending on the symptoms, most likely the parents are going to be notified. And I say most likely, and it's because of my experience as an elementary school principal. There are certain students that always have symptoms. And you sort of get to know those symptoms as a school personnel, or if they're coming in from recess, if they end up having recess during the 2 hours and they're hot and sweaty and they're coughing and their stomach hurts, typically it's because they were having too much fun during recess. But let's just assume that the symptoms are real and that the parents are notified. Parents would come by, transport their child home, and then they would call their pediatrician. Now, at that point, the pediatrician would work either over the phone, or maybe they'd get them in that day. Most likely, I don't know if they would, but the pediatricians are really working together in our area to try to come up with a flow chart that all of them can follow. But the pediatrician at that point would say, you know what, stay home until the cough goes away, or you know what, it sounds like these are 2 or 3 of the most common symptoms of COVID. Why don't you come in for a test? So, but they're the ones determining if a test is needed. Okay? We don't, as a school district, we can't mandate a test. Okay? That's not our prerogative. We don't do that. The parents are really the ones that approve it, and the pediatrician is the one that recommends that. So let's assume that a test was given, and we'll transition to the next slide, and then let's go to, all right, someone tests positive. So now what happens? I'm focusing on a child here, but it could also be a parent, it could also be a teacher or a principal or a superintendent or whatever it's going to be. Once there's a positive test, DOH is notified. Department of Health then calls us, probably within the hour. And no matter what time it is, I mean, it doesn't have to be during school hours. It could be any time, literally up until probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. They're the lead agency. They set up the contact tracing. We assist them with that because we let them know, here are the children that this child was with. Here's the teacher. Here are the other adults that might have been in the room providing services. But they determine the contact tracing, and then they determine the length of isolation and the length of quarantine. It's really the same thing. Now, they are the ones that really, And this is where people may not understand. And Dr. Mendoza, and the only reason I guess I'm feeling really much more comfortable with this part that I'm about to tell you is because Dr. Mendoza, during his weekly sessions with superintendents, has said this over and over and over and over again, probably since mid to late April. They are the ones, contact tracers are the ones that determine who's been exposed. And the exposure is scientific, okay? Exposure is defined as more than 10 minutes, less than 6 feet apart without a mask. So those three things are really the main components of what exposure is. And that's why distancing and masking is so important to us. Right? So they will determine, hey, listen, you know what? You weren't near that child that tested positive. You were in the next room. You were just in the hallway, but you just passed them. And everyone had their mask on, so you're not considered to be exposed. But the family members of that positive test, of the positive tester, they're probably exposed because you're not wearing masks in your home. So most likely the contact tracers are going to say, yeah, you know what? Your child tested positive. Mom and dad, you're quarantined. Siblings, you're quarantined as well. Okay? Unless there's a sibling off at college, and then obviously they haven't been exposed. So once all this is happening and they determine who needs to be quarantined, who needs to be isolated, then they begin to notify. And they notify publicly, they'll say there was a case at Thomas High School. There was a case at Spry Middle School. They never name names, obviously. There's privacy, there's the HIPAA laws, whatever it's going to be. And then we would sort of follow up with that notification as well. Okay? We would be able to reach out to all of our families and say, listen, we had a positive test at blank. But again, that's that process that we'll be following. The other questions that you've asked there are three other ones, or actually there are really just two. The first one is, what's going to shut us down, okay, completely? So all hybrid goes to remote. So all of our students are on remote learning. There are two scenarios that can shut us down. One is if our infection rate goes up to 9%, okay? Not just Webster's infection rate, it's the region's infection rate, Finger Lakes region. If that goes up to 9%, according to Governor Cuomo, we are automatically, as a region, all going remote. Okay? So that's scenario one. And I have no call in that. The second scenario that can shut us down, I do have a call in this. So instead of calling a snow day, I would call a remote instruction day, a COVID day. And this is, what can shut us down is absenteeism among faculty and bus drivers. Now, they may not be sick with COVID, but they just might be sick. They might have a cold. They might have bronchitis. They might have whatever it is. And so, for example, I always get sick at the end of September because the kids have been back for 4 weeks. I've been around the kids for 4 weeks or so, and I always get sick. And I know that because October 1st is my wedding anniversary, and I have not been healthy for one wedding anniversary in 32 years because I've been a teacher for that long. So normally I would just work my way through it, but I won't be doing that this year. And many teachers and bus drivers won't be doing that either. They're going to stay home until they're symptom-free. So if we have a high absentee rate, that can shut us down. It may not shut us down for months, but it can shut us down for a week. Okay? So the last question, and then we're gonna transition to your questions with your raise the hand. The last question that people have asked is, when do we get back to normal? When do we go back to full in-person, 100% kids, Monday through Friday? All right. The one thing that has to happen for us to get back to normal is that the 6-foot rule has to go away. Okay, the 6-foot distancing rule has to go away, and then we can bring all of our kids back. So what makes the 6-foot rule go away? Two things. One, our infection rate goes down to 0, like New Zealand, even though they had a case yesterday. But it goes down to 0, and then we don't need the 6-foot rule, and we can get back to normal. Do I expect our infection rate to go back to 0? No, I don't. That's just the science of viruses and infection. what else can get rid of the 6-foot rule? Well, the vaccine. So if we get a vaccine and most of us get vaccinated, I think the magic number is 80%, then the 6-foot rule, for the most part, would go away, and then we can come back to school. Vaccine could be available by Thanksgiving, Christmas. It should be released by that point. That's what all the signs are pointing to. And then we just have to get the doses distributed. That may take months. So bottom line, and this is where I become the least popular person in this meeting. Do I expect us to get back to normal 100% this school year? The answer is no, I don't. We're going to start off as hybrid, and I do expect us to finish with hybrid. And the reason is I don't think we can all get vaccinated by June. Even though the vaccine will be available, I just don't know if the distribution will be efficient enough for us to all to do that. So expect this year to be that bridge year. Expect us to be hybrid for basically the year. A year from now, I do expect us to be 100% back in. But I'd rather be totally upfront and sort of honest with you now and sort of under promise and over deliver. But I think it's important for us to all have that in mind, that hybrid is basically where we're going for the rest of the year. So that's the end of the second theme. Go ahead and raise your hands and we can open it up for the next 10 minutes.
First question is from Anita Van Wicken.
Good morning. I was curious if there is a short-term plan in place if a student is put in quarantine to keep them learning if they're still feeling well instead of just sitting at home for 2 weeks or nothing.
That's a great question, Anita. And the piece there would be we wouldn't put them right now. We're not going to put them into the remote school. So let's say that you're saying that they're in person, they go into quarantine, and they would, for the most part, we would think that they would really be able to work with their teacher to be able to get the work. It's almost like if your child had mono, okay, and you knew your child was going to be out for 2 weeks. Under normal circumstances, you'd work with the school and they'd be able to get you some work. And we'd be able to help them sort of stay on track. Now, with that said, there's also opportunities for the teacher. They may say, listen, Zoom in on Wednesdays, and you know what, come in and you might be able to Zoom in for a one-on-one to help you catch up or to help you stay abreast of the work. But I don't want to speak for all the teachers. It depends on what their solutions would be and what their approach is.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Anita. Great question.
Thank you.
Next question is from Natalia Gresbian.
Oh, hi, good morning, everyone.
Hi, Natalia.
Hi. So is school providing any alternative care for kids outside the school hours, or at least at the reduced cost?
Yes, we have Wonder Care. So Wonder Care will operate the same hours that it did last year. So that is wraparound care. It's not during the school day though. So it's really, and Brian Freeman is on this call and he's the expert. So I'm going to turn it over to him, but it is at a reduced cost. And Brian, can you just maybe add a little bit more meat to that answer?
Sure. Yeah, we'll continue. This is the second year. We'll have traditional before school and after school care. Wraparound care, similar to what many parents had with the Y or Doodlebugs or Toddler's Workshop. That's for school age kids, that are kindergarten through normally 6th grade. The cost is cheaper than most private places that are in the community. I would say it's reduced because it is a separate entity from the school district, because it has to be self-sustaining. It cannot be subsidized by the district. It's just a program we offer through continuing ed. There are some, things that are going on right now, parent requests for that are part of Wonder Care for afternoon versus morning at the elementary level that they're working through right now. So, there are slots available for people that are still interested in using that wraparound care.
So, Brian, when it comes to hours, let's say my child would be going to school from 8 till 10 or 10:30, and then the care would be available from 10:30 until 4 p.m.?
No, the care would start at 2:15. We're not able under our state charter right now. We would need to get a sign off on the state to be able to offer childcare during that, in essence, 10:30 to 2:30 time frame. We can only offer it from 2:30 beyond till traditional 6 o'clock for wraparound care.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you.
Aaron, before you ask the next question, for the mom that asked about UPK, I just got an answer in live time here. So we are not offering a 100% remote option for UPK. We are not doing that. But we're also not forcing parents to decline a spot for UPK at this point until further information. So anyway, I can't remember the mom's name that reached out, but you can email me and I'll give you some more details as well. So go ahead, Aaron, let's do the next question.
Sure, the next question comes from Kathy Suhenko.
Hi, Kathy.
Good morning. I'm curious about attendance, the overall numbers with the attendance and absences. Like if we're gonna try to keep our kids home a little more frequently because they're not feeling well, or if there's a quarantine situation, is there like a limited number that they're allowed for the year, or how are we handling that?
No worries there. There's there's a lot of flexibility, especially around quarantine. So we all understand that attendance is going to be something that probably won't be as strong as in typical years. But that's okay because it's keeping all of us healthy and it's keeping school open. Great question.
Thank you.
Next question is from Greg Smalter.
Hi, Greg.
Thank you. So Fairport and Pittsford and Webster and the other districts regionally have all put a lot of thought and care into their plans, but they are different. How much do you think each of the districts are going to observe the others and see, oh, this is working better and this is working worse, and let's sort of converge on what we all agree works the best as the year goes on? Or are you guys committed to these plans for the entire school year? Are you gonna, if you're gonna reevaluate, is it gonna be a 3 months or 6 months? Obviously, things could come down from the CDC or the state, which immediately change things, and nobody can foresee that. But just in terms of knowing what you know now, like, are you going to make incremental improvements based on what looks like it's working better?
So incremental improvements, yes. Wholesale changes to schedule, no. It's just way too hard to switch the schedule, especially around for daycare purposes as well.
Well, that's why I'm asking. It's helpful to know that whatever I establish for mornings for my kids is going to not get turned upside down in 3 months. Nope. So that's helpful.
Correct. It won't get turned upside down.
Okay.
Okay. Great question. Thanks, Greg. Two more, Aaron.
Sure. The next question is from Nevin Stutzman.
Hi, Nevin. We'll come back to Nevin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yep, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I was just wondering if you could shed some light or provide any information regarding lunch or food provided for the students.
So, Nevin, at the elementary level or at the secondary level?
Yeah, elementary level. Yep.
Elementary level. So, no real traditional lunch in the cafeteria because they're only there for 2 hours. But we definitely are still going to be providing breakfast and lunch as grab and go. So they'll be able to either eat it, in their classroom, or they'll be able to take it to, let's say they're going to take it to Wonder Care afterwards, or they can take it home, depending on the timing. But meals are still there; they're still available, just not sit down in the cafeteria.
Carmen, if I can add to that too.
Yep.
Nevin, we're still working through the details on that because that is a separate state and federal organization that controls the school food service program. So there's additional guidance coming from them on, what we have to do in regards to traditional lunch and breakfast. For instance, right now we're serving out of a location, Schrader, that's available to everyone. So there's a possibility that might continue. We're hoping in the next week or so we'll get official guidance. So it'll make it streamline the process for parents a little bit. So more to come on that, and we'll blast that out to all the families once we get that.
Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
thanks.
One more, Aaron.
Sure. Last question is from John Yanklowski.
Hi, John.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I was just wondering, I have two kids at Clem South, and we both work, and I was just wondering if there would be busing to and from the school or the daycare centers.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You bet. Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Remember, don't worry if we didn't recognize your hand. You're still going to be able to get your questions answered. So let's go to our last theme: cleaning, distancing, masking. We're also going to throw in ventilation in there too. So we're going to look at this through 3 different lenses, I think, right? Yeah, on the bus, in an elementary classroom, and in a secondary classroom. So let's start with the bus. So on the bus, we will have, I know it says 50%, most likely it'll be closer to 25 or 30% capacity. And again, it's because if you think about it, we're only transporting at most half our kids anyway, because we're on a hybrid. And then nearly half of you are saying that you're transporting your kids to and from school. As of this morning, it was 44%. So that is a lot of kids not on a bus, which is awesome because it allows us to have 1 child per seat. Siblings can sit together, 6 feet apart. We can get the high contact areas in between the runs, wipe them down, and intentionally clean the bus at the end of the day. You can send your child on the bus with your own sanitizer. That's fine. The district has its own supply from the state. That doesn't go onto the bus for a variety of reasons. Many of you have asked about plexiglass. Can we put plexiglass barriers up? We can't use plexiglass because it's flammable. So no plexiglass at all on our campuses or on our buses. Okay? So that's busing. Now, what is it going to look like in an elementary classroom? So the elementary classroom will most likely have around 8 to 13 kids. I think 13 might be a teeny bit high, but whatever. Okay, so 8 to 13. Remember, they're only there for 2 hours. I would fully expect them to have their masks on the entire 2 hours. Unless there is an opportunity, maybe, if they were outside and they were reading under a tree somewhere and they're all 8 feet apart or 9 feet apart, and the teacher says, listen, you're going to stay right there, you're going to read your book, and you can take your mask off for a few minutes. But for the most part, I'm gonna bet that, yep, it's 2 hours, your mask is on. And your mask is on in the bus, your mask is on in the hallway. So just know that going in. The high contact areas in the building are going to be hit multiple times throughout the day, hit with disinfectant. And in between the AM and the PM sessions, we're going to be able to do really all hands on deck to get into the classrooms and wipe everything down. So, and when I say all hands on deck, all of us are going to get trained. So myself, Mr. Freeman, Ms. Land, Mr. Neenan, all of us are going to get trained, aides, TAs, office assistants, you name it. We're all going to get trained and we're all going to help. So the products that we're going to use are hydrogen peroxide based. And I'm going to have Mr. Cunningham, who's our director of buildings and grounds. He's the expert on this product. And we'll just give you a brief introduction to why this product is so good and so safe. Go ahead, Blaine.
Thanks, Carm. Glad to report that before this pandemic started, the district had a product from Diversity called Oxivir TB. This product was primarily used in our bloodborne pathogens program. So feel confident that our staff is highly trained on this. This is a chemical that or disinfectant that we've been using for several years now. The CDC has, it does have a CDC claim for COVID kill, and that is a 1-minute kill claim. So the turnaround on that is one of the best in the market. Probably the best thing about this product, though, is that on the MSDS sheet, the HMIS on this, which is basically the exposure for the people using it and around, is a 0. In terms of safety, it's one of the safest products on the market, and once again, it has a very fast 1-minute contact kill.
Great. Thanks, Blaine. Appreciate that. And then at the end of the day, as typical, the entire building is cleaned by our custodial staff. So that's the elementary classroom. And let's hit the middle and high school classrooms. 8 to 13, but there are some classrooms that we have at the middle and high school level, especially at the high school level, that are really, really large. And I could see maybe a couple more kids getting in, maybe 15 kids. So because we do have some really large tech rooms and some really large other large group instruction rooms. So, but for the most part, it'll be around 8 to 13 kids. Masks are really on at all times at the discretion of the teacher, but I've yet to meet a teacher that is not really going to have their kids always be masked. There is an opportunity if there's an outdoor activity that they are, that the kids may take a mask break. Obviously during, while they're in the cafeteria and they're eating, obviously your mask is down. But for the most part, I would expect kids to be in masks nearly the entire day. High contact areas, again, getting hit a few times during the day. Desktops being wiped down between classes, all hands on deck, using the same solution that Mr. Cunningham just described. Buildings hit by the custodial staff at the end of the day. Now, what about lockers? So lockers will be a little bit different this year, especially at the middle school level. We're going to ask our students to only go to their lockers 3 times a day, which is so they're going to go to the lockers at the beginning, at the end, and before lunch. So those are the only 3 times. At the middle school level, they are going to be able to have full-size backpacks because we understand that the smaller ones, I forget what they're called, aren't probably going to be big enough. So they can have the full-size ones. And at the high school, majority of high school kids don't use their lockers anyway. So this won't be a huge change for them. But at the middle level, we understand that it will. And then the last bullet about hallways, we understand that this is the piece that, we only have half our kids in school, so it's less congested than normal. We will have signage on, we will try to get signage on the floors so the kids don't know you're on the right-hand side at all times. You're on the right-hand side, and try to stay 6 feet apart. Now, with that said, for any of you who know what middle school boys are like, you'll know that 6 feet is almost impossible because they want to be 6 inches apart and somehow bumping, touching, punching, whatever it's going to be. So we will have, adults in the hallways, sort of reminding kids, what, we need to, stop punching your friend and get to class and try to stay separate. But remember, what we have working in our favor is the science behind what exposure means. Remember, exposure is defined as more than 10 minutes within 6 feet, closer than 6 feet without a mask on. So we know that our passing periods are only 5 minutes. Our kids are going to have masks on. And again, so they're not going to be together without a mask for more than 10 minutes, less than 6 feet apart. But we get that in the hallway, it's going to be really hard. And this is the one piece that we're really going to have to work on. The last slide and the last piece for this theme is around ventilation. Again, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Cunningham in a minute. But the best thing about our HVAC systems, is that they are designed for airflow. They're not designed for comfort. They're not a mall. They're not a commercial building system. So they are designed for exchanging air from the outside to the inside and try to refresh all the air within a confined space multiple times per hour. And for the most part, we are refreshing 4 to 12 times per hour. So approximately every 8 minutes, total refresh. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it takes a little bit shorter. But I'm going to turn it over to Blaine now to explain a little bit more about our filters and about the system.
Thanks, Carm. You may recall about a month ago, Governor Cuomo said that malls, in order to reopen, needed a MERV 15 rating for their filtration system. As a school district, because our systems are different, because they bring in so much outside air, and they do air exchanges, and they are constantly running, we cannot have a MERV 15 filter. Our filters are rated a MERV 8. Through our Tools for Schools program several years ago, we used a filter from Camfil FAR. These are a pleated filter. These filters allow to the rooms to refresh accordingly to how they're engineered. And the media also does collect a significant amount of dust and other spores and things that could get into your HVAC system. We have a preventative maintenance program that we change these filters, and we continuously check them throughout the district. And then another note is that the district has an energy management system. This energy management system allows us via desktop or laptop or smartphone to keep an eye on our systems to make sure that they're functioning properly, to increase, decrease set point, and also see if there is an issue. And if there is an issue, alarms are sent to our HVAC personnel so that we can act accordingly on that. So in terms of overall for our energy management system, we're able to track and really look to see what the operation is on a moment-by-moment basis.
Great. Thank you, Blaine. Okay, so that's the last slide. That's our last theme. So let's open it up to questions as you raise your hand on cleaning, distancing, masking, ventilation. Any questions that you may have?
First question is from Megan Wagner.
Hi, Megan.
Hello. My question is about the special needs classes, the kids that are there full day, 5 days a week. My son will wear a mask some of the time, but how is the masking and everything with the special needs classes?
Great question. Mrs. Armstrong is the expert on this, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. A great question. We have our behavior specialists that will be working with you guys as a family and with our teachers and our students to build that capacity for our students. And we know that that's something we're going to need to continue to reinforce and build their stamina and work with them to get there. But we've had some experience with some different summer camps over the summer, and we know we can get our kids there.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Megan.
Next question is from Kristen Abbott.
Hello. Yeah, I just have a question. Are students, more specifically kindergartners and elementary, going to be able to carry their own hand sanitizer? 1, and 2, will they be able to bring a backpack?
Both. Right, Ms. Land? I mean, the sanitizer is easy, and the backpack, I've seen kindergartners wear backpacks for years, so you're all good. Both answers are easy.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Whoops, you're on mute, Aaron.
Next question is from Jack Young.
Okay, hi, Jack.
Hi, this is Julie. Jack's
Oh,
wife.
hi, Julie.
I have a question about busing. I have 2 students that attend DeWitt, and they're going to be riding the buses, but my daughter attends a private school, and I filled out the form in April for that, but I just wondering if Webster is still going to provide transportation to the private schools.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet, Julie.
Next question is from Lisa Nick.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa.
And hi, great job with this Zoom call. Very organized. It's answering a lot of questions that I had. So thank you for organizing these. I just wanted to confirm something that I think I heard you say for the middle school kids, that they will be changing classes throughout the day and that there will be a regular lunch period. So we should plan for that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Next question is from Jamie Rydell.
Jamie.
Hi.
Hi.
Just a quick question about, because I have a child who loves binders to keep himself organized.
Yes.
And he is one of the few, I think, that uses his locker. So just trying to organize this in my own mind. Is that something that teachers will be preparing for, to maybe not have the kids have that stuff on, to have to bring to class on their lists?
Yes, I know they're talking about it now, and I think there's going to be some flexibility there as well. So, yeah, no worries. Take that off the anxiety meter.
All right, thank you.
Next question is from Casey and Diane Smith.
Hey.
Hi, we have a senior who is super excited about an early or late arrival. Is that going to be honored?
Yes. Late arrival and early dismissal are actually, and Mr. Weedor can actually talk about this, because we are going to try to compress, I think, the best we can, the schedules for seniors, so they can get in and get out ASAP. I know that sounds like a horrible thing for a superintendent to say, but for this year, that actually may not be a bad thing. And Mr. Weedor, I'm not sure if you want to just chime in.
Yeah, I would just add that, if you're pulled down Publishers Parkway right before school, the traffic problems we've had in the past. And this year, with more students opting to not take the bus, I would anticipate traffic being worse. So we are actually going to be extending, we're actually hoping that some kids do have late arrival and early release to alleviate that traffic.
He'll be happy to hear that. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you. Two more, Mrs. Land.
Sure. Next question is from Michael Spieth.
Hi. I just want to confirm that the elementary kids will still be able to bring their iPads home in the hybrid model.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. iPads and Chromebooks. Very good. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks very much.
You bet.
Looks like our last question is from Anita Van Wicken.
Thank you again. Around the topic of the dismissal time and the levels or different groups of kids that are being dismissed, as we just talked about, traffic is probably going to be immense, and just the exposure of all those kids getting out of I know the teachers are going to do their best they can. I know that a bunch of our kids want to walk or ride their bikes. Is there going to be, are they going to be allowed to scoot first, as once upon a time when I was in school, so that they get away from all that traffic? That way, they don't have to worry about as much busing and parent cars.
So Anita, I think the quick answer is yes, we do plan on staggering. So we'll have those children on the bus will have a time. Walkers would have a time, and those that are being picked up by moms and dads would have a time as well. Now, with all that said, is there still going to be crowding? Probably. I mean, I think it's going to be tough to get away from that.
Yeah.
But especially the first couple of weeks as we sort of, work our way through the system. Eventually, I think we will have that staggered piece, those staggered pieces. And I think Mr. Bodensteiner, because Anita, I'm assuming you're talking about you're talking about elementary school, right?
Elementary and middle.
And middle, right?
I have a middle schooler who likes to ride.
Yeah.
Who likes to ride to school in good weather, and so the elementary definitely wants to walk or ride.
So I do think you're going to see that staggered piece.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry. Part of that is I do know that in the past, the town, there's been a little issues with crossing guards. Is the town on board with keeping the crossing guards on this year?
Yeah, well, so I know we have at least one crossing guard at Clem North, ever on Clem Road. Do we have another crossing guard somewhere? I don't know of any other area. But yeah, they would be, you know, that's something for, I know that they're, you know, they're not removing whatever crossing guards we had last year. They're still on board for this year.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. It is 11:15, 75 minutes. And I'm cognizant of your time. I just want to say again, if you didn't get your questions answered, don't worry. Feedback form, email me. And lastly, first of all, thank you for taking 75 minutes out of Tuesday morning. And also, I just want to make sure I express just how grateful I am that all of you have been so supportive, flexible, patient, even though that you're frustrated and anxious and stressed. It just goes such a long way to help our community and to help our, you know, all of the Webster school, the teachers and the staff and me as a superintendent. It's just very nice to know that we sort of have each other's backs, even when we disagree. But again, just very grateful for all that you do, for all the advocacy that you're doing for your kids and for our community. And again, thank you and have a great afternoon. Take care.